At this time, I call to order the November 10th, I'm sorry. I'm reading the work session from November. At this time, I call to order the December 8th work session of the MARTA Board of Directors. First, may I have approval of the November 10th, 2022 work session meeting minutes? May I have a motion for the approval? May I have a second? Let us vote. The minutes are approved. I would like the purpose of our delay on today in starting the work session, I thought it very important that we acknowledge one of our board members, Ms. Stacy Blakely, who was nominated to receive the Presidential Award, Lifetime Achievement Award. And I would like to read for you the award she was nominated for. You were nominated by Dr. Lee Lewis to receive the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. The Global Women Empowerment Foundation are exceptionally proud to join the President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden, in honoring you and your community leaders who consistently give to their time and service to make a difference in the lives of others. Because of your commitment and faithfulness to your organization, the lives of others, and your community, the Board of Directors of the GWE Foundation has accepted and approved your nomination to receive the prestigious award from the President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden. The presidential recognition sets you apart from your peers. With this prestigious award, you will receive a personalized certificate and congratulatory letter signed by the President of the United States, along with a Lifetime Achievement official pin and medal. Let's acknowledge Ms. Blakely. And so that was our delay. I thought it was very important that she would hear me read her Lifetime Achievement Award. And by the way, I did not read all of it. It gets quite extensive there. But again, congratulations. I wanted to make sure MARTA acknowledged our board member. Thank you. At this time, we will have a report from our nominating committee. Thank you. Board Nominating Committee Chair, Mr. Frierson.
Thank you. We're grateful for this opportunity. Before I get into my report, I just want to have a point of clarification concerning the Nominating Committee's meetings, and that is that as the committee met and ready to report, I want to make sure clear that we do not have the authority to delay this report to this board. Is that my understanding? Okay. With that being said, as Rod Frierson, I said, Chair of the Nominating Committee. The Nominating Committee submits the following nominations for the 2023-2024 term. For Board Chair, Thomas Worthy. Vice Chair, Katie Powles. Secretary, Al Pine. And Treasurer, Robbie Ash.
The Nominating Committee nominates Thomas Worthy for Board Chair, Katie Powers for Vice Chair, Al Pond for Secretary, and Robbie Ash for Treasurer. I do have a clarifying question, and that is, I believe our chair asked the question of whether or not the Nominating Committee had the authority to request a delay in the vote, and it was said that they do not. Is that correct?
Well, the nominating committee cannot delay the report. It has to make the report. The Any delay would have to be approved by the board, not a committee of the board.
Not the committee.
Committee of the board, right, would have to be done by the board itself.
And then the board has the authority to,
Delay if the board sees fit,
if
correct?
the board sees fit.
Right.
Thank you. Just
Okay.
for a point of clarification.
Okay.
The nominating committee nominated Thomas Worthy as board chair. Nominations are now open from the floor for board chair.
Madam Chair, I would like to, from the floor, just nominate Rita Scott.
Madam Chair, if I may, this is just the report of the nominating committee. The votes and the elections are scheduled and been advertised for the actual board meeting. I think it's number 7 on your board meeting list. That would take place at the beginning of the 1 o'clock meeting.
Thank you. I was reading my emailed script. Thank you. So at this time, we will yield to our GM and CEO for his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to preempt my agenda items with a few housekeeping items. So I want to start by identifying the item that probably needs no introduction that many of you would have seen on your chairs when you came in. I'll just start by saying you're welcome for the ugly sweater gift bags on your chairs. But it is the much coveted MARTA ugly sweater that is being worn by the MARTA elves, who are out and about the system throughout the month of December, spreading holiday cheer and breeze cards, et cetera. So the second item that I want to bring up is really, you'll also find in your packet the schedule of events of our holiday activities. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that. And that includes Tinseltown carolers, elves giving out the 500 breeze cards to bus riders, and of course, free bus rides on the MARTA holiday buses, which is new for this year. Customers who ride on one of MARTA's 3 holiday buses will ride for free. The buses began service on December 4th, and they rotate routes throughout the entire service area. So that's some information on that. And finally, you know, on your seat is also a briefing on the One MARTA collaborative artwork. It's an installation that was conceived by our Artbound team, and you may have seen it. It's hanging in the atrium as you come into a MARTA headquarters. You may actually have passed it when you walked in, and you may have, in fact, participated in making a token at some point in the last 6 months. But please make sure you stop by and check that out today. It's an artistic expression of, you know, the collective sincerity with which we at MARTA recognize the challenges, heartaches, losses, as well as the spirit, successes, and hope of every single individual here at MARTA. So it aptly sits in the front lobby with a simple singular message, One MARTA. From there, I would like, Chair, with your indulgence, to go on to providing a rail car update. That's the last thing on your seat. You'll see the invitation to the December 16th new rail car event, and that leads me directly to the update, which is on the agenda. So after tremendous amounts of engagement, the board will recall all kinds of engagement from a technical operations perspective, as well as other lenses. We also have a customer-centric lens, and we really wanted to highlight that today. Lots of engagement with our customers, key stakeholders, and the design work on our new rail cars gives way to us actually building the cars. So I'm thrilled to share with you that the first of the car bodies from Hungary is arriving next week. Our new trains will be built in Salt Lake City beginning in January. It's real, and we're excited to share this milestone with the public and our key stakeholders. So I hope that you'll be able to join us on the 16th. And in hopes of revving up your interest in that event, I'm going to ask that we play this short video clip.
So we're here in Salt Lake City, Utah at Stadler's manufacturing facility to get a great preview of what our new rail cars will look like.
This is really an event like no other car procurement.
They use a virtual reality. The experience of having a train markup, so you actually have the opportunity to walk inside the train.
So over the past year or so, we've asked our customers, what would you like to see in this new rail car? And we're able to see these things in person, virtually.
We have gathered a group of people representing all kinds of backgrounds, operations, union folks,
MARTA training functions.
We have walk-ups of the interior of the train, so we've been able to walk into the cars, look at the passenger information screens, all the rider information that will be on the screens, what it would be like to actually press buttons, have the control, opening the doors.
It's going to be awesome because that's components. That's basic. It's really easy to maintain. So we're going to in the summer and the heating.
We also have walk-ups of the interior of the operator's cab.
It's so spacious, tight. I just can't wait to operate on. We've done a lot of technology with these vehicle cars. Technology that allows the operator to get more information on how the vehicle's operating. Also technology that allows them to see what's happening within the cars. I like the idea that they're going to be putting lighting on some of the train that will identify the line train that's coming.
Members of our Advisory Council and the MARTA Accessibility Committee with us, and we're looking at things from the customer experience side.
Great things to look forward to, a lot of changes that is going to make the ride a lot more comfortable.
We are actually designing spaces for wheelchairs. We like the way we cars are going to accommodate the bikes and people in wheelchairs.
It's inspiring to see that really matters.
These train cars are designed by you, for you, and by people. So we're excited to go along with this process and look forward to you being on this car in 2025. Welcome to the new CQ100.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is really a briefing on the GDOT SSO triennial audit. So I would ask our Chief Safety Officer, Mr. Ralph McKinney, to come up and brief the group on that.
Thank you, Golly. Testing. Hear me? Good afternoon, Chair Scott, Mr. Greenwood, and members of the MARTA Board. I'm Ralph McKinney, Chief of Safety and Quality Assurance. I'm honored to be before you today to provide a summary briefing on our recent triennial audit conducted by GDOT and their support consultant, TRA. Next slide. This is the agenda my presentation will follow today. I'll go over the authority to conduct the audits, the audit process that was followed, the activities during the audit, and a summary of the findings. Next slide. Congress mandated this list of federal regulations that govern the safety of the operation and maintenance of transit systems regulated by the FTA. Specifically, 49 CFR 674.31 requires the state safety oversight to conduct periodic audits and inspections of the transit agencies in its jurisdictions at least every 3 years. Next slide. Section 7 of the program standard specifically addresses GDOT's procedure to conduct triennial audits performed on-site by the RTA. The audits assess the RTA's compliance with written safety and security plans, policies, procedures, as well as federal, state, and local requirements. Next slide. This is the schedule of the audit activities and their applicable dates. The on-site audit lasted for 5 days, September 26th through the 30th this year. And also item number 5 there, the recent activities on our schedule. MARTA received our draft audit report from GDOT on the 2nd of December, and we'll have 30 days to provide comments and return the report to GDOT. Next slide. As a part of the audit process, GDOT deployed 5 audit teams. Each team consisted of 2 to 5 members from GDOT and TRA. Each team was assigned MARTA SMEs to participate in the audit and accommodate the audit team's request. And these items, these areas represent the various departments within the MARTA system. Next slide. So the major takeaway from the audit, as shared from GDOT during our closing briefing, were no major safety gaps or concerns were identified. Across the audit, GDOT found strong practices and commitment to safety, and preliminary findings and observations are subject to change upon further review of documents. Next slide. And as you can see by the numbers, MARTA safety compliance has seen a significant improvement over 2019, the 2019 triennial audit. going from 91 caps, 91 findings, and 113 corrective action plans to this audit cycle that yielded 36 findings, 20 deficiencies, and 16 items from areas of concern. The 20 deficiencies are areas where MARTA did not meet the criteria for compliance, and the areas of concern are where we are partially compliant with the criteria. Next slide. The next two slides are just examples of some of the findings that were discovered and identified during the audit. Some of these items were actually corrected during the audit, but the corrections will not be finalized until the final report is issued. Specifically, item number 3, during an inspection with our EP&E team, the audit team went out, discovered that there were no expiration dates on the gloves and the tools. GDOT actually called me at home that particular night. We deployed some folks out to get the right proper PPE and tools to those individuals that were working. So that was actually corrected on the spot. So that's an example of the last takeaway from the audit, that these items, although they're found during the audit, a lot of them are corrected and it will be reflected in the final report. Next slide. Here again are a couple items that more than likely will be corrected prior to the issuance of the final report. Rule compliance, we've been in the process of implementing our rule compliance program, or re-implementing the rule compliance program for roughly about a year now with WSP. Also, the heavy rail rule book obviously needs to be updated. 2009 is the last update that we have for the rule book. We do issue general orders that reflect changes in our processes, but those changes in the processes should be reflected in our rule book, and the rule book updated periodically. So when we do have changes, the employees actually get those changes, but it's just not reflected in the rule book. The last item there, no heavy rail operator recertifications in calendar year 2021. That was actually corrected during the audit as well. It was kind of a misunderstanding. We actually changed from a fiscal year certification period to a calendar year certification period. So that's another example of a area of concern that'll be corrected in the final report. Next slide. Here is a list of observations that shows both areas where MARTA can improve and also shows MARTA's commitment to safety, and provide evidence that a strong safety culture exists, and we're continuously improving. In the next briefing, Daniel Heck will shed some positive light on MARTA's maturing safety culture and commitment to safety by sharing an example of how collaboration and making tough, informed decisions ensures the safety of our employees and customers. That concludes my portion of the briefing. Daniel.
Thank you, Ralph. And just consistent with that, I'd like Danielle to come up and just follow through on the second part of this.
Great, thank you, Ralph. Good afternoon, members of the board. I'm Daniel Hecht. I'm the Deputy Chief Mechanical Officer here at MARTA. I'm going to be giving you a briefing on the safety hold of our streetcar system. Next slide, please. So today I'll be briefing you on why we have a safety hold on the streetcar system, mainly focusing on the inspection findings that led to our decision to proactively remove the Siemens cars from service. Now, this is due to routine inspection findings on track switch issues and wheel profile issues. Now, I'd like to note these were known and planned inspections, and we knew that these issues were occurring. That said, the degradation of the wheel profile led us to do a comprehensive analysis over the last few weeks and make the tough decision to put the Siemens streetcars on a safety hold. I'll also discuss our plan of action today. Next slide. A few weeks ago, routine track inspections found loose and broken bolts on 2 of our track switches. A photo of these bolts is shown here. Upon closer inspection, MARTA staff found that a false flange condition on the wheels, which I'll explain in detail later, had degraded to a point where it was causing track weight issues. MARTA track department staff tightened these bolts and did a deeper comprehensive inspection of the track switches. Now take note of the photo on the right. The wheel set on a train has a flange that rides on the inside groove of the embedded trackway. That's shown in this green line here. That's that groove. But you'll also see an area where the concrete is essentially chipped away from the outer edge of the rail. That's the red circled area, and it roughly follows that orange line. That's due to the false flange condition of the rail wheels. Next slide. So briefly, the physics of how train wheels work, and this is important as I get into the flange issues. Train wheels, unlike car tires, which are cylinders, train wheels are conically shaped. Now, because of the conical shape in normal operation with properly profiled wheels and railhead, the wheel set will self-center in operation, and it self-corrects when turning. Now, most people think the little flange, the nub on the inside of the train wheel, that's what keeps the train wheels on the track. And that's partially true in switches and turnouts and tight radiuses, but generally the conical action keeps the wheels centered on the rail. Next slide. So here's a more accurate representation of the wheel profile. On the left is a train wheel, and we'll take a slice out of the pie, so to say, and where that blue arrow is pointing at the bottom, that's where the wheel touches the railhead. We'll take a tracing of that profile. Now that blue shaded area line corresponds to the blue line in the diagram on the right. The green is the railhead, idealized railhead. So in this diagram, the wheel's floating a few inches off the railhead. As I said, in normal operation, the slight taper of the blue line, which you can see here, keeps the wheel centered on the flange and helps guide the wheel. Now the red line shows the current profile of the wheels. Wheel wear over time has eaten away at the tread and flange face of the wheels, leaving a profile that roughly correlates to the shape of the rail head. The wheels are softer than the rail, and that's by design, so the wheels get chewed away before the rail head. On the outer edge of the wheel on the right side of the diagram, you'll see what I refer to as the false flange. Now, the false flange contradicts the conical action I discussed earlier. You have two competing forces in the rail. It causes hunting, ride quality issues, noise. The second thing a false flange can do is damage the infrastructure, causing the trackway damage I showed with the orange line in the previous photo. Okay. Next slide. Briefly, each train has 12 wheels on 6 axles spread across 3 trucks. On the left, there's power trucks. There's one on each end, and on the right is a center truck. As you'd expect, it's in the center of the rail vehicle. Next slide. So we know the issues with the wheels. What does it take to change them out? The steps are to unhook the truck assemblies using the pit at the maintenance facility, and then we literally lift the train body off the truck assemblies, leaving the truck assemblies on the ground. Those get put on a truck, and they are being shipped to Siemens in Sacramento, California, where Siemens will do a comprehensive overhaul of the truck assemblies. That's about 8 weeks for them to overhaul a set of trucks. They're shipped back to MARTA, and they are installed on our vehicle. Now, we've come to the board before talking about wheel truing machines and truing wheels and the machines that we use to do that. And you might ask, why can't we true the wheels in this case? And that's a great question. As you true the wheels, as you lay them down to get them back into that idealized profile, the blue line in the previous picture, you eat away material. And if you do that too much, you actually get into the diameter issues where you start impacting the web of the wheel. So we can't true the wheels anymore, otherwise they get too small. So the only option is to replace them. Next slide. So I mentioned earlier this was known and planned for, and it's being expedited due to the safety hold. Now, back in the first quarter of calendar year 2021, MARTA staff began noticing wear on the wheels, and we started the procurement and specifications to have the wheels completely replaced. You may recall a presentation at ONS and board action in October of 2021 to fund this initiative, and upon approval, Siemens had to procure the wheels and other associated material through calendar year 2022. There's a global wheel shortage right now, so I'm glad we got on the books a while ago to get our wheels. Siemens has them currently. Concurrently, we decided to roll the brake overhaul into the truck rebuild program. Now, you'll recall we came to the board in March of this year requesting funds for a brake overhaul with Knorr, that's the original equipment manufacturer. Then we came back just a few months ago in October to change that authorization to have Siemens do that work for us. That was in October of this year. And this was approved. Now, our plan was to start shipping truck assemblies 1 streetcar at a time to Siemens starting this month. But due to the degradation of the wheels, which I discussed, we put a safety hold on the streetcars, and we are expediting this entire program. We currently have a streetcar getting its trucks removed today. We expect the semi-truck to be here to take those to Sacramento next week and start the process. Next slide, please. Continuity of service. The streetcar loop is currently being serviced by cutaway van vehicles, stopping at every streetcar stop and operating on our standard 15-minute headway. We're planning on having these mobility vans wrapped to indicate these vehicles are operating on the streetcar route. We're focused on retaining ridership, even though the mode has changed. This includes community outreach, posters, the vehicle wrap, and having streetcar operators run in the vehicles so that there is a semblance of normal streetcar service. It's important to note MARTA brought in Hatch LTK to support these initiatives and provide an independent, non-biased assessment of the wheels, the trackway, and our operating and maintenance procedures. They have in turn brought in subject matter experts, including the preeminent experts in transit wheel-rail interface issues. They brought in the people who wrote the textbook on these things to help us out. So we're doing a very deep dive, and this extends beyond the overhaul. We're looking at the whole method of operation for Streetcar. Now, Ralph mentioned our safety initiatives and how we want to proactively make decisions in the best interest of safe operations. So why did we put a hold on the Streetcar, you might ask? It really comes down to a few key items. First is the risk associated with continued operation of the degraded wheels. That's derailment risk, damage, to protect the public and to protect our brand name, to reduce the damage to the trackway, which we saw during those inspections a few weeks ago. And lastly, really we want to walk the talk. We are safety oriented in operations. This safety hold demonstrates our priority, and we're going to do this right. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions? Yes, Mr. Pond.
How much do you project we are going to spend on renovating the streetcars?
So the current contract with Siemens, in total, including the full truck overhaul, all the support services, everything that was board approved, is about $7.4 million. The wheels themselves for all 48 wheels is about $400,000 in the material and labor cost alone. It's an expensive set of tires.
Okay.
Mr. Mullis?
I noticed that the streetcar was not running, and I was a little concerned about that. I am a little concerned that we didn't have any redundancy in our system. I know MARTA did not plan nor constructed this project, and this is something that we inherited. When we took this over, did we do an inventory of operations and what did we need for OEM?
Yes, when we took the streetcar over, we did a full condition assessment of the right-of-way. There are some gaps that we noticed that we're going to be funding in future capital programs, so you can expect to see me back in front of the board, and George can fill in the blanks.
Yes, Board Member Mullis. When we took over, we did a very thorough condition assessment of all of the assets of the mode, and I think it's a fair question in retrospect that, could we have planned for and procured accordingly to make sure that we had, spare trucks and things like that. So I think really a part of this whole thing is to actually demonstrate some learning. So as a part of what we're going to be doing during the safety hold to get the mode back into revenue service, we will, in fact, as a part of this contract, have spare trucks. We will also be coming back to the board with a contractual vehicle to make sure that we have contracted embedded track services available to us. So, yes, I will. I think it's fair to say that there were some things going back a few years we could have done differently.
So another item, I'm looking at your timeline. If you can put it back up here for us.
Previous slide,
Which I
please.
think it's slide number 8.
Right
Is
there.
that correct? Slide number 8. Yeah, that. Help me understand, after the board action, and I wasn't a member of the board, but I'm thankful that for the previous board to take action back in October of 2021. What caused the procurement process to go out to the third quarter of 2022?
if you're talking about the material procurement slide there, that was the actual purchasing of the wheels themselves. So we had board authorization with Siemens to do purchase the wheels. These aren't off-the-shelf wheels. We have to have these things made. There's a backlog in wheels. So that months and months long process is Siemens getting the materials ready for the truck overhaul. This was
Well,
a planned overhaul.
I'm talking about the material procurement. It seems like that could be a sole source procurement, and we could have moved in action on October the 22nd. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
So guys, if I can, I think what
Sure.
Mr. Mullis is asking is, when the board approved it on October 21st, did it take from quarter 1, 2022 to quarter 4 of 2022 to issue a procurement? And I think what you're saying is it was out, and the material procurement really means it's the material being produced and manufactured by Siemens to come back to us. Does that
Correct.
answer your question?
So just to make sure that we took action, from my understanding, and we awarded Siemens a contract prior to sometime between the first quarter of 2022 and the third quarter of 2022. Is that fair?
Yeah, we already had Siemens under contract. So as soon as the board authorization for the contractual modifications to include the wheels happened in October of 2021, Siemens got the go-ahead to start producing the wheels and getting the material. Again, this is all custom stuff, so they had to have manufacturers build these. Siemens doesn't necessarily build these. It may be Penn Machine that supplies the wheels. So that's that block from Q1 of 2022 till currently. So now we have all the materials ready to go. Now the second block there is the brake overhaul, which we decided to roll into this because if we're taking the trucks off the train, sending them to Sacramento, we want to do a full comprehensive overhaul, a one and done type of deal.
Okay, it seems like the wheels are the issue. Right? So let's go with the wheels first, okay? So we knew there was a problem on October the 21st. And we took immediate action because we had a sole source agreement with Siemens. And Siemens, we have supply chain issues going on at the time, and so they're having trouble procuring the wheels. But we tell them we need this because we're going to have to stop operation at some point in time. No, we didn't tell them that?
No, not back in October of 2021. No.
When did we notify Siemens that we were going to have to stop operation?
Okay, let me just bridge the gap here. I think what the gentlemen are saying is we started a proactive process to engage Siemens, get the wheels, get the brakes, and that was board approved, and that went on. It wasn't until a couple of weeks ago that on our routine inspection, we noticed that the conditions are such that we're going to have to make a decision to, in the interest of safety, stop rolling these pieces of equipment, let the Siemens process work itself through, and in fact expedite, as Daniel had said, expedite that process so that we could put the trucks back in service. So there, the moment a couple of weeks ago that we discovered this, the Siemens process was already in motion.
So from a safety standpoint, Mr. GM, this was 2 weeks ago was the first time we noticed that it was an unsafe situation?
Correct. Is that about, Daniel, the timing? Did I have that right? 2 weeks?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, we knew there was issues with these wheels. This process got set in motion a long time ago, but it's to a point where the risk is just too great to sustain operation.
And in fact, I might add that when you discovered it 2 weeks ago, it wasn't, we couldn't definitively say that this is a safety risk. We said in an abundance of caution, we will stop rolling the equipment and get the experts, the industry experts in here to truly assess. I don't know if are they now on property, the SMEs that have, yeah, so they may come back and say, you can take a risk, but I suspect in today's day and age with what's going on in transit, those are words that we don't want to hear.
Thank you for prioritizing safety, but I would like to see some redundancy put into the system.
Thank you, Mr. Mullis. Ms. Blakely?
Thank you, Chair Scott. Thank you both for such a proactive, detailed briefing. I appreciate that. My question is in regards to the vehicle wrapping and the continuity of service. So, understanding that the trains had to be shipped to the West Coast, and we are in the process of wrapping mobility vehicles. What is the time frame for completing the wrapping of the vehicles so that our customers understand there's still service and that these vehicles are indeed serving the temporary purpose of the streetcar?
Yeah, we're hoping to have them wrapped by the end of next week. The graphic designers are finalizing the wrap this week. I've seen emails flying back and forth as early as this morning, going over the details. So as soon as we can get them printed, we'll get them put on.
Okay.
And we're going to have 4 dedicated vehicles to Streetcar that are going to be wrapped. Again, we're going to have Streetcar operators operate those, so they know the route, they know the passengers. This will be the best continuity of operation for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blakely. Mr. Worthy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I speak for all of the board that we appreciate prioritization of safety. That is all of our number one passion and our number one concern. I think I would feel a lot better if Siemens was in Charlotte, North Carolina, or Jacksonville, Florida, rather than all the way across the country. So this is big materials being shipped a long, long way. I understand this timeline, but if Atlanta is fortunate enough to get the World Cup, I mean, do you think these things will be rolling by the end of Q2 2023, or?
Oh, yeah, the streetcars, the 4 streetcars that we have, yeah, we expect them back. Like I said, we're prioritizing this, so we expect this to be back in service sometime early next year.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Lastly,
Could I have one
Mr.
quick
Floyd.
question, which,
Thank you, Mr. Floyd.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Your name wasn't up here yet, so go ahead.
We're now not longer restricted by the rails in the, we're running rubber-tired vehicles, and it's basically the same route. Maybe it might be a good time if we looked at changing the route on out to the Beltline or somewhere where we're talking about doing it in the future, or is that, I mean, you know, looked like to me we got a little flexibility here in what to do and how to do this. We might find out a little more about what people are looking for and how it's going to work in the future. That's just a wild hair idea. So,
Yeah, you know, thank you, Mr. Floyd. We've been so focused on, you know, resuming what we had that, you know, your comment is valid. It's something that we should certainly consider. Don't ever lose the opportunities inherent in a crisis, so we'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Mr. McMurray?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment on Ralph's presentation and commend Collie and Ralph and the whole MARTA team, including you, Chair, for your continued focus on the culture of safety. And I think that was sort of highlighted when the FTA asked GDOT and MARTA to jointly present at a safety summit for state safety oversight and RTAs nationally, where the associate administrator of FTA asked that Ralph and Clement Solomon of GDOT present on how safety culture should work. And so that was quite an honor and a privilege, and I just wanted to share with fellow board members the commitment that's being made here and the progress that's continued to be made, all in the name of safety. When it comes to safety, you can't do enough. And so I just want to, again, share our appreciation for our job of enforcement and making sure that things are in compliance, enforcement and compliance. But the partnership has been very good, and much progress has been made as demonstrated by that triennial audit findings, which was a lot smaller than the previous one. So thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Ash?
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on that to say that one of the things I have been struck by in the 12 years that I've been here at MARTA is how good our capital maintenance program has been over the decades. Since I've been here, we've seen headlines in New York and in Washington and Chicago and other major legacy rail systems about deferred maintenance, about work that hadn't been done, about mission-critical safety problems. And while that doesn't mean that every bolt is exactly where it needs to be, I have been consistently impressed by the commitment and vigilance of MARTA's capital team to making sure that our state of good repair is truly a state of good repair. And to follow a tag team on my colleagues' comments, the streetcar was not something we built. But I want to commend the team. We knew it when we took it over, that it was going to be a work in progress. And so I want to commend the team for figuring out a way to get that as right as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Ash. Are there any other questions or comments?
Thank you, everyone. One more item, Madam Chair, is really to bring the board's attention to the upcoming events and meetings of significance in your board packets. Special attention to the MARTA New Rail Car event that we spoke of earlier. So that's taking place on Friday, December 16th at our South Yard facility in College Park. We also have the MARTA Employees Charity Club Holiday Shop, which is happening the next day. So that's Saturday, December 17th at 9 a.m. here at the headquarters. And of course, the Riders Advisory Council, which is occurring in person in the atrium on January 4th. Beyond that, we have the regular occurring events, such as the MAC committee meeting on Tuesday, January 10th. We also have, subject to board approval of the calendar, we have board meetings and board committee meetings happening in January. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield to you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwood. At this time, may I have a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of real estate and litigation?
So moved.
May I have a vote by hand, please? At this time, we will move into executive session. Thank you. I call to order the December 8th, 2022 meeting of the Board of Directors for MARTA. Mr. Andrews, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments, so happy holidays.
None via email or voicemail?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the November 10th, 2022 Board of Directors meeting minutes? May I have a second? Let us vote.
Excuse me, but I did not vote against. It did that thing that it does when you.
It says you voted
Yes.
again.
If you could please put me in the for column, thank you.
Thank you. You have been moved to the for column. The approval of the minutes for the November 10th Board of Directors meeting has been approved. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, if we may, could we amend the agenda to add the 3 real estate and 2 litigation matters that we just discussed in executive session to Section 9, other matters?
Second.
Section 9, Section 15. To other matters. Thank you. At this time, I call for committee reports, planning and capital programs. Mr. Pond?
Madam Chair, the Planning and Capital Programs Committee met on Thursday, November 17th, 2022, and approved the following resolutions. A, resolution authorizing the approval of Bus Rapid Transit as the locally preferred alternative for Clayton State Route 54 project. B, resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of MARTA's next generation automated fare collection system, RFP 50189. I request approval of these resolutions.
I have a second. Mr. Durrett, let us vote.
I didn't vote against you.
You didn't vote?
I had Frieda disease.
It happens, Robbie.
Thank you, Mr. Pond. The resolutions have passed. Operations and Safety, Mr. Worthy.
Madam Chair, the Operations and Safety Committee met on Thursday, November 17th, 2022, in a long one, and approved the following resolutions. A, resolution authorizing the award of a single source contract for APSI capacitor upgrade kits, RFP PP 50219. B, resolution authorizing the award of a single source contract for AC traction motor overhaul and repair services, RFP P50226. C, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of FM200 fire suppression systems inspection and testing services, IFB B50144. D, resolution authorizing the modification and contractual authorization for construction management services for indefinite quality construction contract CMI QCC, RFP P40987. E, resolution authorizing the modification in contractual authorization for indefinite quality construction contract services, RFP P40916. I respectfully request approval of these resolutions.
Mr. Durrett, is your light on? Let us vote. Thank you, Mr. Worthy. The resolutions have passed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This concludes my report.
At this time, Business Management Committee, Mr. Frierson.
Madam Chair, the Business Management Committee met on Thursday, November 17th, 2022, and approved the following resolutions. A resolution authorizing the renewal of MARTA's excess property and liability insurance programs for 2023. Item B, a resolution authorizing the modification in contractual authorization for professional services for B2G Now, software maintenance and support, LOA, L45246. Item C, a resolution authorizing modification in contractual authorization for Orbit Analytics software maintenance, RFPP P45361. I request approval of these resolutions.
May I have a second? My screen isn't showing the vote. Sorry for the delay. My screen isn't pulling up the vote. Yeah, I'm here. See, nothing's coming up. Is it? Let me verify the vote. I cannot, it's not coming up on my screen. So it is now. The resolution passed. Thank you, Mr. Frierson. The resolutions.
Madam Chair, this concludes my.
Thank you. External Relations, Mr. Ash.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the External Relations Committee met on Friday, November 18th, 2022, and received the following briefings. A government affairs update, and B, the MARTA media impressions update. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Ash. Audit Committee, Ms. Hardage.
Madam Chair, the Audit Committee met on Friday, November 18, 2022, and received the following briefings. A, briefing MARTA Annual External Financial Audit for fiscal year 22. B, briefing internal audit activity. C, briefing cybersecurity. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Hardage. At this time, we will hear again from the Nominating Committee.
Madam Chair, a point of information, please.
Yes, sir.
Regarding Nominations Committee, do nominations from the floor require a second?
No, they don't.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd.
Okay, Chair Scott, once again, I'm called upon the Nominating Committee members to give this report. Once again, just a point of clarification. I know we spoke about this in the work committee, but just for a point of clarification, and the Nominating Committee does not have the authority to lay this report. This is something that we have to report to this board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Rod Frierson is chair of the Nominating Committee. The Nominating Committee met, and we submit the following nominations for the 2023-2024 term. For board chair, Thomas Worthy. Vice chair, Katie Powles. Secretary, Al Pond. And for treasurer, Robbie Ash.
The Nominating Committee nominates Thomas Worthy for board chair, Katie Powers for vice chair, Al Pond for secretary, and Robert Ash for treasurer. For a point of clarification, I just have a question. I do believe you said 2023, 2024. Are we saying until 2024? Just for clarification as to.
It is for 2023
until
2024.
Thank you.
Correct? All right.
The Nominating Committee nominated Thomas Worthy as board chair. Nominations are now open from the floor for board chair.
Madam Chair, as I had mentioned once before, for the record, I just want to nominate Rita Scott for chair.
Thank you. The chair. You needed to state your name for the record. I'm reading.
Roderick Frierson.
Thank you. Rita Scott has been nominated for the position of board chair. Are there any further nominations?
We're just talking about board chair.
Correct.
Yes.
Are there any further nominations for board chair?
Nominations for board chair be closed.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? May I speak? First of all, I'd like to say that I accept the nomination, mostly because I think for continuity and the fact that we need to continue on the road that we're on. We've had a hard year, and it's been a time that personally as board chair, I've reached out to all of our jurisdictions to make sure that their needs, their opinions, their desires are ones that we could bring before the board. And so I am honored to be nominated to continue as board chair. In light of where we are, we've emerged from the pandemic. We've had a hard 2022 year, and I think that we're in a direction that MARTA needs to be with our jurisdictions, and I think it's very important that we continue. Is there any other discussion or any other questions regarding the position of board chair?
Madam Chair, do you mind if I make a statement as well?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also humbly accept the nomination, but I want to make my intentions very clear to the board. I think I agree completely with Chair Scott. I think that we're moving in the right direction as an authority, and I will commit to you that I will make all of those efforts to continue that right direction and improve where we identify improvements. I also want to let you know that I believe strongly in the fairness of rotating through jurisdictions to each take an opportunity to serve as chair. And so I will announce to you my intention, because a nominating committee is only for 1 year. Council has advised us that I could not do that. We could not split terms, but my intention, if elected, would be to serve for 1 year only in 2023, and then name a nominating committee with the expectation that Ms. Powers would serve for Clayton in 2024. That would obviously have to go through the nominating committee process, but that would be my intentions, and I wanted to make all that very clear to you.
Mr. Pond?
Let me give this just a little bit of context. First of all, I want to go on record to say that Rita Scott has done a marvelous job as chair this year. And I mean that very sincerely, and I speak from my heart when I say that you've done a wonderful job. But 2 years ago, I was on the nominations committee, and we talked about we could have continued on with the previous chair for continuity. And we, as a nominating committee, came up with 2 options, and one of those was yourself. And for that reason, we discussed it, and I do feel there's benefit in rotating the chair to represent the different jurisdictions.
Thank you, Mr. Pond. May I make a comment in regards to your comment? I do believe in rotation. And if we were at the point that we were, or as a board, if the board member that we've identified was able to continue or to take over or to be elected as chair, personally, I would support that. If we also felt as if though at this time, that person representing the jurisdiction that we have identified as the next jurisdiction, which is Clayton, was unable, then I could understand if we moved to the next jurisdiction. The next jurisdiction would be Atlanta. We're not moving to jurisdictions and those that we represent. We're not representing jurisdictions if we go in the direction as proposed. I think it's very important that we make sure that our leaders in the jurisdictions that we represent know that the head or the person at the MARTA board chair, as the chair, has an interest in each jurisdiction and wants to make absolutely sure that the citizens in those jurisdictions, in all of our jurisdictions, are foremost at the concern of MARTA. Thank you. Mr. Snyder.
Thank you, Chair Scott. First, I wanted to echo what Mr. Pond said about your service. The past 2 years, I think you've done a great job. And personally, I appreciate what you've done and how you served the board. We had a lot of discussion on the nominating committee. I was on the committee, and these two options are in front of us. I had concerns about the notion that we would have someone who was not part of a jurisdiction, but I also know and like Thomas very much, and so I think that he would serve as a board chair very well, and so I don't necessarily have a problem with the proposal as it is, because he is a very good person, and I think he would do exactly what he said, which is serve the board well and move forward with the plans that we have in place. With that said, I did want to tell you, though, that you've done a great job, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, and I want to echo, I have no problem with Mr. Thomas. I like his baby, like him.
You can have him if you would like.
To add like with Mr. Thomas, I have looked at past practice, and I believe that it has been a past practice that when necessary, we continue with the existing chair to solidify where we are. And I appreciate all of the comments. I appreciate the nomination. And I just want to say that I think it's in the best interest of MARTA and our jurisdictions that at this point, because our proposed jurisdiction is not able at this time to be chair of the MARTA board, that we would continue in the direction that we're going to solidify what we have in place at that time. I think it would be very difficult for us to assume, and I do believe it was Mr. Floyd that said to me at the last 2 years ago that 1 year is not enough time for a direction for the board chair. And I did not quite understand it when he made that comment. I do now, and for that reason is the reason that I accept this nomination, because the proposed, I do believe we also had a conversation to solidify, I believe, Ms. Abdul Salam question about what is the process and how we should rotate chair. And we didn't get a final report regarding that committee. However, I do believe that was a point of concern during our last election. And for that reason, had it been proposed that if the deemed jurisdiction was not able to serve, we would move and continue to the next jurisdiction. I would not see that personally as a problem. But for that reason, because we have not deemed to move to the next jurisdiction, I again say I accept the nomination. Any other discussion? Mr. Frierson.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I wanted to just to share that the reason why I nominated Rita Scott is because, once again, I think that she has done, continued to do a great job for this board as we move forward. But I also understand that there are some reservations about the chair position not being within the jurisdictions. And it is a fair question, all right? And this just has nothing to do with Thomas. I think Thomas would do a great job. But it was one that our constituents are asking and would want to know that whoever serves in that chair, if they're not over the jurisdiction, that they will continue to make sure that we find a way to grow MARTA and fund MARTA and do all the things that we need to do to make sure that we move forward in the best interest of the jurisdictions. And so, and that's my thought behind it, but I think that whoever we decide to select will do a great job for us, but that is of a point of question that I'll have to answer to, but that's all right. I'll be able to do just that. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Floyd.
Well, thank you, Chair Scott, for reminding me what I said, but I can't remember what I said last week, much lower 2 years ago. So I'm not gonna agree that that's what I said or not. But you know, I think we put a little too much into this jurisdictional thing. This is a MARTA board. You know, it's not a DeKalb County board. It's not a Fulton County board. And Thomas Worthy is an appointee to this board, just like anybody else that sits on this board. He sits here with the purpose of trying to make MARTA the best organization he can be in. He's done a good job at that. He's been here. He's been attentive to it. He's paid attention to what goes on, and he will do a good job as chair of this board. And so I support him regardless of where his appointment comes from, and in that way. And I'll agree with Mr. Snyder that you've done a good job, Chairwoman. You know, you and I had a contentious election 2 years ago, and I wasn't sure I agreed necessarily on how that came out, but I was fine to get out of that mix and get out of that race for whatever reason. But it's time for a change, and this board needs to move on now and elect a new chair and move into the future. We can't hold on to what we've been doing as right or wrong, but we just need to move on with some new blood and new spirit in this board. So I support Thomas's nomination. I hope everybody will continue to vote for him, and we can get on with this, and I'm ready to vote.
Ms. Hardage.
Thank you. And once again, I want to thank you for your service as well. You've done a wonderful job, Ms. Scott, and I appreciate all your hard work as chair. But let me just echo everything. I agree with everything Mr. Floyd just said, but while we have jurisdictions that are taxpayers that we serve, and that's what we're here for, clearly the MARTA Act has the governor appoint someone, Thomas Worthy, for which all of our jurisdictions report to the state of Georgia, I believe. We also are fortunate to have Russell McMurray from GDOT here. So clearly the emphasis from many of our legislators is just that. I think we've worked so hard to try to move the pendulum just a little bit, bring in more jurisdictions, let the state be more aware of what's going on. So as I've heard these discussions this week, I called and asked the question, can you give me the numbers as to how much the state of Georgia has contributed to MARTA? And I got the number, since 2015, the state of Georgia has contributed $149.8 million to MARTA. So that being said, I do think that Thomas would represent us well. He's appointed by the governor, and I think we all want to try to work so well with the state.
Thank you, Ms. Hardage. Are there any other comments? Hearing none? Hearing none? Hearing none? Let us vote first. Mr. Thomas Worthy, may I have a motion and second? That's for the results, I'm sorry. Let us vote. Mr. Worthy, those that are voting for Mr. Worthy, please lift your hands. Thank you. That's a total of 8 votes. Those that would vote for Ms. Scott, please. That's a total of 4 votes. May I have a motion to accept the votes, the results of the vote?
Madam Chair, I so move that we accept the results of the vote. And I'll second it.
Thank you. And let us raise our hands to accept the vote. With that being said, Mr. Worthy will serve as the next chair beginning January of 2023 for the MARTA Board of Directors. Vice Chair. Ms. Katie Powers has been nominated by the Nominating Committee for Vice Chair. Nominations are now open from the floor for Vice Chair. Are there any nominations from the floor for Vice Chair?
I move to close the floor to nominations. I'll second that.
Hearing none, the nomination is closed with Ms. Powers. Let us vote. I do believe that's. Okay, Ms. Powers is unanimously voted as Vice Chair. I'm going by a script, so I'm trying to make sure I am where I am. The Nominating Committee has nominated Al Pond as Secretary. Nominations are now open from the floor for Secretary. Are there any nominations from the floor for Secretary?
Move to close the floor to nominations for Secretary.
Second.
Second, let us vote. Mr. Pond is unanimously elected as Secretary. Treasurer. The Nominating Committee has nominated Robbie Ash as Treasurer. Nominations are now open from the floor.
Madam Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes, sir.
It is my request of my colleagues that I appreciate the nomination very much, but respectfully decline it and ask that Rita Scott be nominated in my place.
I second that motion.
Mr. Pond.
Point of order.
Yes.
And I'm fine with that, but the past chair serves on the executive committee as a standing position. So there are 5 positions on the executive committee, so I just wonder, is that what we want to do?
I defer to Peter, but I'm pretty sure that immediate past chair is not in the bylaws, that has functioned as a member of the executive committee, but it is not a bylaw-specific officer. Is that correct, Mr. Andrews?
That is correct, Mr. Worthy. I will point out, even though it's not a specific board chair or board position, just in case it does come up at any point in time, a member of the board may hold one office of the board at any one time. So based on, the fact that it's not listed as a officer position, it's just by happenstance, if you will, been treated as such, I think it's still okay to have the immediate past chair as the board treasurer as well. And I'm just looking at Justice Sears.
Yeah, I did some research on Robert's rules. You may have more than one, you may serve in more than one role under Robert's rules, unless the bylaws conflict, and they don't appear to conflict. They're not clear. Much of the bylaws aren't clear.
Let me add one other thing. I have absolutely no issue or problem with that. I just was pointing that out. Was that a rules of order kind of conflict? So.
Madam Chair, if I may follow up on this, the historic practice of this board has been that when the immediate past chair has been elected to a different officer role, then the executive committee simply functions with 4 members. That's right. And the truth of the matter is the executive committee doesn't vote on anything. And so it is largely a matter of ensuring that we have continuity and that we created, honestly, the unofficial role of the immediate past chair on the executive committee. So it is not necessary that we have 2 different individuals filling those 2 different spots, and hence, hence my nomination.
I don't think I have a problem with it, but if we have the opportunity to have 5 people on the executive committee, why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't understand why we wouldn't want to have 5 people if we could. That's just my only question. I don't have a problem with whatever role Ms. Scott would like to serve, but I really don't know why we wouldn't want 5 people.
yeah. And Madam Chair, with that being said, I think we should have 5. I mean, I think that we work well with the 5, and the past chair served on the executive committee. And so with that being said, I would like to be considered for the treasurer position. So I self-nominate myself if that's.
Well, I'll nominate Rod Frierson.
Okay.
For that job. You don't have to do that, Rod. I'll do it for you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Floyd. Appreciate that.
With that being said, any other nominations for treasurer? Hearing none, I will yield to Mr. Frierson. And we vote.
So this is just a vote on the now unopposed nomination of Rod Frierson.
Have you closed the nominations, Madam Chair?
I'll vote to close the nominations
Okay.
from the floor.
Okay.
Has Madam Chair declined her nomination?
Mm-hmm.
That was my sense of what you just said, but
I declined the nomination based upon the fact that the board feels as if though we should keep within the 5 people
Gotcha.
on the executive board.
I'm trying to, my mind's trying to keep up. Okay. So the posture is, as my understanding, Mr. Frierson is the sole nominee for treasurer of the board, and nominations are closed, correct?
Correct.
I vote for Rod.
I will keep control of the keys very well.
I can report the best duty, the best thing about being the treasurer here is that years ago, the board voted to relieve the treasurer of actual responsibility. Good luck. That's the only reason they let me hold it.
With that being said,
Well, still have big shoes to fill, so.
with that being said, Mr. Frierson has been elected as treasurer unanimously. I do believe that is the end of the votes for the existing, or I'm sorry, the upcoming Board of Directors.
Do we need any official action for the past chair to be on the board? I'm just asking again.
No, there's no official action needed for that.
Okay. Good idea.
What? One more. What? Right. I've just been informed. I was closing the election piece and moving to the vote on the board committee meeting schedule. Watch the screen for a motion and please vote. And so is this the upcoming, the 2023 schedule?
Yes, ma'am. What is before you right now is the proposed schedule for 2023 for the work session, regular meetings, and all of the committee meetings.
I move to approve.
Let us vote. The 2023 MARTA Board of Directors schedule has been approved. Are there any other matters to come before the board? I know.
I will try and read them quickly.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Andrew.
I see a couple lights on. Ms. Blakely, I'm sorry.
Quick question. When are we going, oh, sorry, thank you. When are we going to resume the committee that we started last year in discussion about rotational chairperson throughout the jurisdictions? Like, we started that process, but we didn't finish because Ms. Roberta went out on sick leave and she was a part of that committee. When are we going to resume that committee?
Ms. Blakely, you're absolutely right. I can report to the board that the committee, the ad hoc committee on board rotation met on probably 4 or 5 different occasions, a couple by phone back when COVID really started. But I feel like Ms. Abdul Salam was such an integral part of that committee, and then when she was unable to participate, that has kind of wound down. But given the discussion today, I think it's very important. So I will reconstitute that committee next year and get that back to work.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you. Judge Sears, I see your light on.
Oh, no, I just didn't.
Thank you. Other matters, Mr. Peters? Mr. Andrews?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, I appreciate it. The first matter before you is a resolution authorizing the execution of Amendment Number 1 to the South Fulton Park and Ride Lot Agreement between the Georgia Department of Transportation and MARTA. Whereas the Georgia Department of Transportation and the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority entered into an agreement dated November 13th, 1980, the original agreement, which granted MARTA certain rights of use to the GDOT-owned South Fulton Park and Ride Lot pursuant to the terms of the original agreement. And whereas JBE Realty Holdings LLC has requested to lease from GDOT for 25 years a portion of the South Fulton Park and Ride Lot to be used as a separated and gated space for parking for Jim Ellis employees, hereinafter referred to as Jim Ellis Parking Area and further described herein. And whereas the parties wish to amend the original agreement so as to exclude the Jim Ellis Parking Area from the legal description of the GDOT-owned South Fulton Park and Ride Lot set forth in the original agreement, and permit Jim Ellis to construct a variety of improvements for MARTA in MARTA's portion of the South Fulton Park and Ride Lot. And whereas excluding the Jim Ellis Parking Area from the South Fulton Park and Ride Lot will not affect the right and ability to use the remainder of the South Fulton Park and Ride Lot to serve bus and other public mass transportation passengers and for park and ride services for the benefit of the citizens of the state of Georgia. And whereas MARTA and Jim Ellis will enter into a separate agreement in which MARTA will allow Jim Ellis to have limited access to the South Fulton Park and Ride Lot for any necessary maintenance of the improvements, and whereas MARTA will continue to maintain the South Fulton Park and Ride Lot pursuant to the original agreement as amended by this amendment. Resolved, therefore, by the Board of Directors of the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority that the General Manager, CEO, or his delegate is hereby authorized to do all acts and perform all things and execute on behalf of the authority all instruments of conveyance, other instruments and agreements as necessary to effectuate the amendment. And that is it for this one. Thank you. The next one is an amendment of a resolution approving the sale of MARTA land parcel C2104A to the City of Atlanta in exchange for MARTA's purchase of certain air rights. Whereas on February 12, 2020, the MARTA Board of Directors approved a resolution authorizing the sale of MARTA land parcel C2104A at 0 Forsyth Street, Atlanta, Georgia 30303 to the City of Atlanta in exchange for MARTA's purchase of air rights. And whereas MARTA will sell land parcel C2104A, also known as 143 Alabama Street, to the City of Atlanta in exchange for MARTA's purchase of the city's air rights over the MARTA tracks. And whereas the exchange will occur in order to facilitate the development of the existing building at 143 Alabama Street and the land to the west of the building. And whereas the appraisals for each parcel required updating pursuant to MARTA's policies and the value of the parcels to be exchanged has increased since the board's prior approval. And whereas MARTA staff is requesting the board amend its prior resolution, be it resolved, therefore, that the general manager / CEO or his delegate is hereby authorized to execute the intergovernmental agency documents between MARTA and the City of Atlanta for the sale of land parcel C2104A to the city for $1,016,000 and the purchase of air rights by MARTA over the MARTA tracks across from 5 Point Station for $1,016,000.
Move approval of the resolution.
Second.
Moved and second, let us vote. Mr. Andrews, the resolution has passed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next one is a resolution authorizing the execution of a settlement and release agreement with Gresham Transportation Services, LLC, approval of the assignment and modification of supplemental mobility operations and maintenance services contract number P43706. Whereas the authority's Department of Bus Operations has determined that it is in the best interest of the authority to settle, release the current contract, and increase the contract value to provide for known changes and additions to the Supplemental Mobility Operations and Maintenance Services Contract P43706. And whereas the contract provides for an additional mobility transportation service provider to service the authority's patrons, and whereas the contract was assigned to Gresham Transportation Services on or about April 1, 2019, and whereas MARTA and GTS have agreed to cease and discontinue their business relationship, and whereas MARTA is still in need of supplemental mobility operations and maintenance services as outlined in the contract, and whereas GTS has agreed to assign the contract to A National Limousine Services to provide these services, and whereas the contract requires MARTA to approve any assignment of the contract, and whereas the parties have negotiated an assignment of the contract, payment of costs owed to GTS, and an increase in the hourly revenue rate to effectuate a smooth, orderly, and efficient assignment of the services for the benefit of MARTA riders. Therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Directors of the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority authorize the General Manager, CEO, as delegate to execute a settlement and release agreement with GTS in an amount not to exceed $3,007,070 for all claims, disputes, and payments agreed to by GTS and MARTA. Therefore, be it further resolved by the Board of Directors of the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority that the General Manager, CEO, as delegate, is hereby authorized to approve the assignment of Supplemental Mobility Operations and Maintenance Services Contract number P43706 to A National Limousine, and amend Supplemental Mobility Operations and Maintenance Services Contract number P43706 to increase the amount of the contract $2,293,947.48 for a total contract value of $43,223,130.81.
Move approval of the resolution.
Let us vote.
Madam Chair, please let the record reflect I'm abstaining.
Mr. Ash has abstained from the vote.
Madam Chair, I'm abstaining from the vote.
Mr. Mullis has abstained from the vote. The resolution passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution. The next one is a resolution authorizing the submittal of the second round of acquisitions offers and settlements for right-of-way and easements in support of the Summerhill Bus Rapid Transit Project, City of Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia. Whereas pursuant to the MARTA Act of 1965, as amended, MARTA exists for purposes of planning, designing, leasing, as leasee, purchasing, acquiring, holding, owning, constructing, improving, equipping, financing, maintaining, and administrating a rapid transit system within the metropolitan area, and operating same. Whereas the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority's operations staff has identified a public need to acquire property within the City of Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia, and the city is within the territorial jurisdiction of MARTA. Whereas MARTA will expand its rapid transit system by developing, maintaining, and operating a bus rapid transit project located within the city. And whereas MARTA Planning and Capital Programs has identified that certain real property located adjacent to the Summerhill BRT corridor, City of Atlanta, Fulton County, State of Georgia, for acquisitions to facilitate Summerhill BRT project. And whereas MARTA and the city executed a rapid transit contract and assistance agreement as amended, and a project-based agreement executed on March 25, 2022, whereby the parties agreed to coordinate their efforts regarding expansion of MARTA's rapid transit system, including without limitation the city agreeing to work with MARTA and upon the request of MARTA to exercise its eminent domain power to acquire any property rights and interests necessary for MARTA to carry out its purpose as stated in the MARTA Act. And whereas upon the city's approval, MARTA will submit offers to the fee owners of the properties in the amount of the appraised values. If negotiations for fair and equitable purchase terms are not successful, then MARTA will request the city initiate condemnation proceedings. Resolved, therefore, by the Board of Directors of the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority that in accordance with the policies and procedures previously adopted by the Board, the acquisition of those real properties known as MARTA parcels B101, B102, B104, B105, B119, B122, B122A, B126, B133, B139, B164, and B173, as identified as Exhibit A attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference, are hereby determined to be necessary for the construction, operation, and maintenance of the authority's bus rapid transit system, and hereby is approved, provided the acquisition costs do not exceed the estimate of just compensation as further identified in Exhibit A. Be it resolved, therefore, that the general manager/CEO or his delegate is hereby authorized to offer and execute acquisition agreements and/or other settlements with the fee simple owner or owners of the acquisitions of these for the acquisitions of these properties, and in the event a mutual agreement or settlement is unsuccessful, to request the City of Atlanta to initiate condemnation proceedings.
Move approval of the resolution.
Let us vote. The resolution has passed.
And finally, Madam Chair, request a motion to approve a settlement in the amount of $250,000 in the case of Jose Flores versus MARTA and Saquon D. Maddox.
I'll move approval of that.
Second. Let us vote. Resolution has passed. Are there any other matters? Hearing none, are there any comments from the board?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, I sit here a blessed man, so deeply grateful. Back in 2010, when I was first appointed to this board, MARTA was on an unsustainable path of annual deficit spending, burning through our reserves, and headed for insolvency. It is almost hard to imagine sitting here now how different MARTA's financial and institutional legitimacy were back in 2010. We were not taken seriously in any of the halls of power in the city. Virtually every headline about it was bad news, and those that weren't bad news were worse news. And when I got appointed, I frankly expected that what we'd be doing was negotiating a bailout and restructuring with the state, kind of like what ultimately happened with Grady Hospital. But instead of continuing on that path, Dr. Beverly Scott and the board engaged management consultants to do the top-to-bottom comprehensive management audit and financial audit, which Keith Parker and this board then used to right the ship. Through tremendous work by our staff and a consistent insistence on fiscal discipline and a focus on doing the duties that lie nearest, we accomplished what we set out to do. We got the train back on track. Instead of the statutory insolvency we would have been in 2014 and the true bankruptcy we would have been in 2016, thanks to a lot of hard work, we have had an unprecedented string of budget surpluses and rebuilt our cash reserves, restructured our debt, lowered our borrowing costs, saving hundreds of millions of dollars, thanks to a great professional team. Most importantly, we've given our stakeholders confidence that additional investment will go to expand and enhance a fiscally responsible, operationally disciplined authority. And that is precisely what convinced the voters, first Clayton in 2014, and then Atlanta in 2016, to invest with us, confident that their money would be well used. It also gave the state confidence enough to make its first investment in our system in decades. And over the next decades, together with our jurisdictions and other stakeholders, MARTA will tailor, retailer, and reweave the filaments of the great tapestry of this phoenix, the city of Atlanta. To quote Virgil, sic iter ad astra. And for the opportunity to have been part of that, to have worked with the people in this room and the people who used to be in this room and all of those throughout the rest of this building and our incredible women and men who drive the trains and buses every day. It has been the honor of a lifetime to work with you all. But in all things, there comes a time to close the chapter. And over the past year or so, I've been pondering what's next in my life. And I have concluded it's my time to yield the field. And so with a heavy heart, but real joy at all that we've done together, I am tendering my resignation so that MARTA can get a new, fresh set of arms and eyes
to keep pushing forward because our work is not yet done. I remain confident that MARTA's best days are ahead of us, and I can't wait to see them. Thank you all for everything. Thank you. Thank you all.
Well, as they say in Hollywood, that's a tough act to follow, Robbie. I, like Robbie, will be announcing my resignation from the board as well. Robbie and I have gotten to know each other really well, so I wanted him to say his spiel. He's been on the board a lot longer than I have. But I wanted to say to everybody that I've worked with over the past couple of years, I really enjoyed getting to know everyone here. I think you're all really, really top-notch professionals. I'm really happy to have an opportunity to have served on the board. I think that we are really pushing MARTA in the right direction. And I've been very, very pleased to see the initiatives that we have put in place and that will continue down the road. I'm happy to see that Collie will be leading the charge. I think he is the right man for the job. I think that electing him was the right thing to do. And really happy for you, Thomas, that you'll be serving as the chair of the board. I think you'll do a great job, as I said before. But as Robbie mentioned, and as he said so eloquently, I think it's time for us to move on to the next chapter. We're both attorneys and very busy, so we're going to have to do that now. But I will tell you that I'll always be available if you need anything or help. But it has been a great pleasure to work with you all. And I look forward to seeing you soon as friends and colleagues. Thank you.
Mr. Direct.
Rita, I just wanted to say before we leave here that how much I appreciate your steadfast service to the board as chairman for the past 2 years, and it's been a pleasure to work with you, both as a MARTA board member, but also as a representative from DeKalb County. So without minimizing the service of our 2 board members who have announced their retirement, I want to make sure that I said that to you today.
Thank you. Mr. Pond.
Madam Chair.
I think I'm looking at it's supposed to come up in order.
Did he cut me off again?
He cut you off. He cut you off now. There,
Nothing's new.
Mr. Pond, and then you, Mr. Floyd.
Without minimizing the impact that Robbie has made over 12 years and Rachel more recently, I just wanted to thank you again from Chair Scott. I said earlier when we were talking about board rotations, but from the bottom of my heart, you've done a wonderful job. You've been collaborative, and I don't think many people in this room realize all the extra effort a chair has to do. I mean, you're working and you're spending an immense amount of personal time trying to make MARTA better as a board chair. And I know many of us see that and just wanted to thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Pond. Mr. Floyd. Ms. Powers, I saw you on Mr. Floyd hung up. We're going to let Mr. Floyd speak and then.
Absolutely. I don't want to get on the list of cutting off Mr. Floyd.
No, that's a long list, believe me. But anyway, Robbie was on the board when I first came here, and Robbie's been a role model for me on this board for a long time. And Reginald, you have done an incredible job. Your vision and side about handling what goes on here and you know, understanding of how this place operates is uncanny. And so we are losing 2 very dear, important board members here. And I don't know who Mayor Diggins is going to appoint, but they're not going to fill these seats that well, I can tell you. So I'm sorry to see both of you leave. I wish you the best. I mean, for lawyers, you're incredible people. So anyway, thank you. I mean, for what you all have done and what you've meant to this organization, both of you.
Thank you. Ms. Powers?
Sure, I'm a little concerned about the quotient of lawyers that is going down. Unlike Mr. Floyd, I feel like we're dwindling numbers. So I'm going to miss my seatmate, Mr. Ash. But Chair Scott, I just wanted to thank you for your service. You were so incredibly welcoming to me when I joined this board a couple of years ago, and have been so supportive through a sea of personal change that's been for the better, but supportive of that, both of me and my family, and certainly have served in great leadership of this board. So thank you.
Mr. Worthy.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, I still feel like I'm the new guy in here, and I've come to realize I'm not, which is kind of scary. But Robbie, you're a close personal friend, and you've taught me not only how MARTA works, but to share your love of it. We are going to miss you deeply. You taught me so much when I first got here, and thank you. Reggie, I agree with everything they say about your vision, and you're a brilliant lawyer. We're going to miss you, and your open-ended invitation to make phone calls will be taken up on. Hopefully you don't bill MARTA. Hopefully it'll be a pro bono situation. But we miss you both. And I want to echo all the comments said about Chair Scott, specifically Ms. Powers. You know, you have led us with dynamic, transformative leadership. Similar to Ms. Powers, I had a baby 2 years ago, and we have bonded over the age of my son and your grandchildren, and we've shared the triumphs and tribulations of 2-year-olds. But you're a personal friend, and you've been amazing to this agency, and thank you for everything.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy. Mr. Firestone, and then Mr. Mullis.
From the moment that I walked into the doors of this building, I've been a sponge, and I have learned so much from the employees as well as from my board members here. It has been a wonderful experience working with all the board members here at MARTA, and I want to say thank you, Robbie, because you're one that I first met when I first walked into the first meeting I had with MARTA, and you shared with me some things. So greatly and greatly, deeply appreciative. And once again, you've left an impact on how I think it is that we can champion MARTA for the future. And I'm reminded by a quote that I often share, and that is that if you can't lead the people unless you love the people, and you can't save the people unless you serve the people. And what we do here is love and service. And if we can just keep our eyes on the prize that is before us, we'll be just fine and not get stuck in the weeds. And so I'm so grateful for you. You've kept your eyes on the prize, on how we could build this enterprise and how we could save this enterprise and how we can expand this enterprise. And that I am so grateful and thankful. We will miss you. But your legacy will live on, at least in my mind and my thoughts. So thank you. And Madam Chair, we'll look forward to the new role you'll be serving. All right. But once again, we'll continue to press on with what we're doing. And I look forward to working with Thomas Worthy in his role. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mullis, then Mr. McMurray.
As the baby on the board, well, I'm no longer the baby on the board now. Is that correct? That's right. As the youngster on the board from the jurisdiction, I'm reminded of the very first time I met Robbie Ash. And it came down to we were going to the state capitol in 2002 to talk to Hugh Broom from Donaldson, Georgia. And his passion, we were going to talk to him about the sewer system. His passion for infrastructure has just grown over the years with success after success. And if you look around and see the cranes around Atlanta that we see today, $5 billion plus of new construction per year for the last 6 years, you can thank Robbie Ash for it. And I want to thank you for your service for first working together as newbies on the sewer system, and then focusing on the infrastructure of MARTA. The citizens of the region owe you a debt of gratitude and your family. Reggie and I met because of his, oddly enough, around infrastructure again. Our very first meeting was back when I was doing, I just finished up a study for transit-oriented development for MARTA. And I invited Reggie, who's law partner, was a real estate attorney, and we were talking about, with the leadership team of MARTA, of how we could fast-track transit-oriented development based upon the study I had just done, right? And Reggie's passion just showed through in that meeting. I think it was 2011, is that correct? 2011. And for me to look up and to see all of the contributions that you've made to moving transit-oriented development forward at MARTA just warms my heart. And I will truly miss your wise counsel, because, you know, some people might call us fire and ice. Guess which one's ice? And finally, my chairwoman, the person who welcomed me in to MARTA for the first time in January, I greatly appreciate it. And you remind me of the reasons why MARTA was formed in the first place back in the vote in 1971. We wanted, the first vote of MARTA failed in 1968. Most people don't know that. But in 1971, the people wanted to have collective bargaining for the unions, fares at 15 cents, equity where we had transit lines, and expansion throughout the region. And when I walked in the door, you told me that that was still the mission, and you've led this year with those principles that allowed DeKalb and Fulton County to vote in and tax themselves a penny back in 1971. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for holding the mission of MARTA true in everyone's heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mullis. Mr. McMurray?
Thank you, Chair Scott. I first want to say thank you to you for your leadership over these 2 years that have been very challenging and also very rewarding. As I mentioned before, I want to continue to thank you for your focus on safety and safety culture, to be intimately involved in great detail of all the things needed to be happening through the State Safety Oversight Program and closing out the corrective action plans. And I can attest that there's been great progress, and GDOT and MARTA are in a better place today because of your leadership. And I want to say thank you for that in recognition. Now, Heather and I cannot vote, but if we could, we would both make a motion to object to these 2 resignations that we've heard today from the board. So, Reggie, I want to say congratulations. Thank you for your service. Robbie, I want to say a lot, but I'll keep it short. Robbie and I came on this board in 2015, so Robbie's got me beat by several years of service, but somebody I always looked to and watched when I came on this board to see how he operated and navigated and led while he was in his positions when I came on relatively new to this board, and learning a lot like many of you have from Robbie. So Robbie, I want to say thank you for your leadership. He tends to poke fun at GDOT a little bit every now and then, maybe like paving a parking lot or something like that, but he is a great friend, will always be one, and I want to thank you for your leadership during some unprecedented times as well, and especially back in 2015 and all the things that have come henceforth, where again, to state investment and state understanding of the importance of MARTA. So thank you, my friend, and I look forward to seeing you in the future in different capacities. So we would put that motion on the floor. And the only last thing I'd say was Al Pond and I may have a chance with engineers beginning to outnumber attorneys. So maybe I'll talk to the mayor and see if we can get some more engineers in here. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Help is on his way.
Mr. Quino?
Yes, thank you, Chair Scott. I just wanted to echo the sentiments from the other board members. Thank you for your leadership, and wanted to thank Robbie and Reginald for just welcoming me to the board. I look forward to participating and look forward to Colley's leadership, so thank you.
Mr. Greenwood.
Thank you, Chair Scott. I also want to add my gratitude to you for your leadership over the years and look forward to continued work with you on the board. And, you know, I want to echo the sentiments that have gone wholly around this room when it comes to thanking our outgoing board members, you know, Mr. Ash and Mr. Snyder. I can't say enough about I think personally I valued, you know, I've benefited from the characteristics that people are speaking of here today, and I feel like personally I valued from those contributions that you've made wholeheartedly. I mean, I want to talk about the expansion of the MARTA program, and I also want to talk about just the ready and daily representation in public events, knowing that, you know, when MARTA is showing up, there are board members that are going to be there in support, and those that'll pull me aside and point things out for contextual awareness, and I really value those contributions. I also want to say that, you know, we're also seeing in Clayton County appointment of a new board member effective January, and I wanted to publicly thank, you know, Ms. Roberta Abdul-Salam for her conscientious service over the years and the selfless hours that she has put into her role in investing in MARTA. And, you know, I think the expansion into Clayton County is one of those products that we can thank her for her participation in. We of course will take the required time to pull together a formal event recognizing these contributions, and we'll, you know, as details become available, we will get that out to everyone. But suffice to say, and I won't reiterate or try to count all the wins that this trio has given us collectively, but MARTA would obviously not be the agency we are today without you, and so I thank you wholeheartedly very, very much.
Thank you. I don't know if I could speak without my family now call me a water baby. And when I think of Robbie Ash, I think of us standing there at the homegoing of Mr. Parker. And Robbie being emotional to the point that he could not turn to the program where he was in the program. And my touching his hand and saying, here's where you need to be. And so with that, I want to say, I could see your love for transit and for MARTA. Thank you. To Reggie, whom I've known a short couple of years and have had many conversations, I appreciate your passion and the desire to do the right thing. And I say that to the two of you as you leave, and to Roberta, who's not here, whom I talked to, and shared my prayers for her health. And just want to say, as having served as chair, when I came to the MARTA board, when being asked by DeKalb, I said my plate was too full because of the many things going on within the state at that time. And as I listened to the concerns of my community and the community organizations, I felt as if though I needed to make room on my plate. And so with that, I say that I support Mr. Worthy. However, I am a person of conviction, and I'm a person that believes that my stance needed to be made on how I felt. Nothing against Mr. Worthy, nothing against the board or the slate that was proposed, but my conviction in serving my community. And so with that being said, I want to say thank you. Those of you that know me know sometimes when I can't think of the exact name, when I first came here, I sat next to Rod Edmonds, and we had a couple Rods. And so I affectionately named Rod Edmonds Dr. Lawyer, so that when I would identify which Rod I was talking about, I would call him Dr. Lawyer. Mr. Safety, I've nicknamed him Mr. Safety in our meetings. Is that not correct, Mr. McMurray? And so affectionately, I name MARTA as the service, public service to the community, to Atlanta, to all of our area. And I thank you for the opportunity as having an opportunity to serve you. Thank you. At this time, with no other comments, we are adjourned.